So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, actually I said that yesterday, I want to change that. I'll say, welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to this second panel we've got on at VegFest this year, Bristol Vegan Fayre, and it is titled Movement Unity. It involves a number of people from animal groups, the nationals. We had yesterday a fabulous panel with Animal Aid, plant-based universities, one or two others who I'm just going to have to try and remember. Anyway, it was a really good panel, and it will be filmed later. And now we have Animal Justice Project, Plant-Based Treaty, Viva, and Animal Rising representing on this panel. So what we're going to be looking at is really about how can we collaborate more. This sessions have come out of, Animal Think Tank was who we had yesterday, and it was the Animal Think Tank get-together in February when they called all the national groups together, and we had a 2-day session. We were looking at movement unity, we were looking at narratives, and what was particularly clear that come out was that there was a lot of collaborations going on amongst the groups, and as we will find out, as Claire actually from Animal Justice Project said, 10, 20 years ago when we came into this, it just wasn't the done thing. Of course, now it is, and we want to see more of it, and we want to see the groups working together and seeing if we can really come into the beginnings of what we might call a mass movement. The Freedom to Marry campaign in the USA a decade ago is a little bit of the model. This is a campaign that looked at, not so much changing the message, but looking at the messaging and tapping into shared values and how we can get people who don't agree with us to come on board. And of course, the Freedom to Marry campaign was hugely successful, and the laws were changed in 2015-16. So that's one of the many models. So there's a lot of work going on with this, and what we're really doing here is just looking at, first of all, how we're collaborating, and then secondly, we're going to be looking at, what else is in the pipeline, and then thirdly, we're going to also ask the question, what's holding us back from doing more, some of the problems we may face, and then we're going to come into a couple of solutions-based ideas that I'm going to spring on my panel, see what they think of it. And this conversation is ongoing. We are going to be continuing this in November at the VegfestUK London event and into next year. So it's a really exciting time. I don't think we've seen quite such a year of action. And there's so many good things going off. But what's making a real difference is when the groups start collaborating, and that's been happening naturally, and I give credit absolutely to a number of people within these groups who are already doing this, already pushing for it, already achieving on a really, really dynamic and exciting level. So the first question I've got for my panel, and I'll just ask you one by one. You can first of all introduce yourself, and then really ask, tell us about some of the collaborations you've already been doing. And I'm going to start at the end. So that is Claire from Animal Justice Project. Grab a microphone, Claire. Tell us a little bit about you, and then briefly, yeah, that's it. And
hello.
There you go.
So my name is Claire Palmer. I'm the founder of a small NGO called Animal Justice Project. We started in the UK as a small grassroots group of activists campaigning against vivisection, and we've grown quite tremendously over the last couple of years. So we've now got some paid staff, which is amazing, and we work predominantly on farmed animals. So we carry out undercover investigations and pressure campaigns and consumer awareness campaigns. So my name's Claire Palmer. I'm the founder. I'm a zoologist. And we collaborate with other organisations quite regularly, whether it's on sign-on letters, like open letters, whether it's even some conservation organisations, like for whales and dolphins, they'll just drop us emails. We've been involved in the animal think tank workshops, and we're generally quite open to working with other organisations, but we do tend to work only with organisations that have the same ethos. In other words, they want sort of animal liberation, animal rights as AGP. So, thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And so now we have Peter from the Plant-Based Treaty. And of course, Peter, I think we know that Plant-Based Treaty has benefited immensely from collaborations. Talk to us a bit.
Yeah, I think the core of the
microphone.
Up here? Yeah, I've managed to get to this age without ever using one. The core of the Plant-Based Treaty is a global petition, and that's not just ours. So it's used in India it was used by a kind of ad hoc group who pulled themselves together a couple of months ago because Modi was getting rid of a law, an agreement between states about live animal transport, and over a weekend, the Plant-Based Treaty petition was part of the ammunition that they gave themselves, and they managed to get the Modi government to step down and actually accept some animal rights academics into the negotiation for the new law animal protection structure there. So it is a tool for all groups. I'm personally talking to Animal Rising because they've got a council thing, which we work in local. We target local democracy. So we target, if you're in a city, we target the city government. If you're I'm on the Isle of Wight now. The Isle of Wight Council, it's a very conservative culture on the Isle of Wight. It's very farm-led. The agriculture has a strong say, but nevertheless, I plug away personally. But in Southampton, you've got Animal Rising talking to the council and talking about how can you use institutions the same way that like the universities group are, which I really want to get more with the universities group because I want to attack prisons. I used to work in prisons. I used to teach in prisons. And I want to look at institutions. Our parent organisation, SAVE, in Canada, has had great success with hospitals, and they actually they found that hospitals in Canada sound weird. It's like part private, part state, but they got a system going in where first meal you're offered as a patient is vegan, second meal you're offered is plant-based, third meal will be fish, whatever. But they got very, very high take-up, and the satisfaction levels for the plant-based meals were they exceeded the satisfaction for the other meals. So people who aren't vegans getting the opportunity just to be fed vegan and then to get the benefits at a time when they need the benefits, when they're ill. So that's something that I think we can apply in prisons. Food poverty in prisons is shocking. It's shocking. Prisoner welfare is something I care very much about. And food, I haven't worked in a prison now since 2013, but things were better then. There were more officers, there were more staff, they were better supervised. They're not so well supervised now, and I bet the food hasn't got any better, and it was lousy then. So I'd really, really see an opportunity working through the Prison Officers Association. I'll go now. The Prison Officers Association, the academic prison service journal, things like that. But I'm just making the tie-ups with other organisations because I don't know how to do this, So Plant-Based Treaty can do some, but I definitely need comrades.
Oh, thank you, Peter. So that is really important work. Prisons is institutions, and I would love to see actually this one. I know that the Plant-Based Treaty have done a 1.5, their 1.5 plans, and it really covers in depth universities, but also prisons, hospitals, the military, police force, all these institutions. And of course COP28, getting these places to go plant-based. And they've got whole blueprints for it. And I'm just going to point to, actually, because we're talking about Plant-Based Treaty, this is one of the collaborations that has been really noteworthy. And back in January, February, the Plant-Based Treaty collaborated with Viva, Animal Justice Project, Veganuary, Animal Rising, and VegFest to send emails to councillors in Edinburgh who were going to vote on endorsing the Plant-Based Treaty. And in the space of 48 hours, these 5 groups managed to reach hundreds of thousands of people. And I can safely say that the Edinburgh councils were bombarded with voluminous amounts of emails. And what was really interesting is that the fellow Steve, who was the councillor pushing for this, made a point of, obviously Edinburgh went ahead, they won the vote, the councillors voted to endorse the plant-based treaty, with some pretty amazing ramifications as a result. The councillor Steve cited the amount of emails as being an absolutely crucial factor, because the councillors felt validated and supported. And obviously, as a councillor, you've got to get your votes, so you want to know that what you're doing is... And that was probably, I would say, the biggest collaboration of in some respects that we've seen. And it was phenomenal. And I think it's inspired a lot of us to see the potential. And I would just point to... but the plant-based treaty then did a petition just a couple of months ago to get COP28 to go plant-based. We didn't get that collaboration, and the petition kind of stumbled at around the 10,000 mark. And we know that if we perhaps got in touch with the groups and given some notice and then put that in a schedule, we'd have probably hit 100,000 by now. So there's a couple of examples. Thanks for that, Peter. Jasmine from Viva, hugely, probably the biggest vegan pressure group in the country, possibly in Europe. Talk to us about collaborations, because you've been doing quite a few recently.
Yeah, we've been quite involved recently in a lot of on-the-ground collaboration. So obviously we went to NARM and NARD, went to a Solidarity Day with Breathe the Free recently. So we're really putting a focus on getting on that kind of on-the-ground presence. So we've got all the groups kind of there on the street that people can see. And obviously with the power of social media, that can go so far nowadays. So we're really putting kind of a focus on increasing that kind of collaboration. Like you said, with the email, that just goes to show the power of using our extended network. Altogether, we probably have hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions reach. So I definitely think that's so crucial in collaboration, is sharing your kind of emails, petitions. So it's something we're definitely open with for Viva. So please, anything that you want us to send and to help support, because obviously everything for the animals and the planet, we're all here kind of under a unified kind of aim and message. What Viva has kind of done since... at core at the Viva's heart is we do a lot of investigations onto factory farms, and then we'll do outreach tours. So we love to invite people to come along to our outreach tours, both national groups, but also kind of local activists and kind of smaller grassroots groups. And we think that's a great opportunity for them to kind of get on ground, get some outreach experience, or even teach us. I've learned a lot from people who are local outreach groups. So it's such a good way of learning and spreading that message. And from that, we also do stall packs, and it gives a lot of grassroots kind of outreach groups the opportunity to hold their own events using Viva materials, and that's something we're really passionate about, kind of getting that really wide scale. So we recently had a Muller killer campaign that was based off our investigation into zero graze farms, of which Muller was 2 of them, and we had probably like 50 different groups order stall packs, so groups all across the country, and it was just so powerful to see everyone standing up for the cows and kind of showing the public what dairy is. So if you ever need materials or support, or looking to set up your own kind of group, that is a place Viva can really help and collaborate with other groups in the area to see if that's something we can help with.
Wonderful, thank you, Jasmine. It's really exciting because Viva do have a big reach, and it's really important that we get everybody on the same page, and pretty much everyone is, but and we'll come to possibly some of the reasons why people aren't in a bit. But that's just some examples of some really fantastic collaborations. And I know that Alex from Animal Rising is a massive fan of collaborations, and Animal Rising have been quite fortunate in that respect. But I know also that the younger Animal Rising crew are pushing for this, and that's because I get their emails. And, they are really, really wanting to see this. So, Alex, tell us more. Collaborations with Animal Rising this year, been phenomenal.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. As a writer, I don't like big abstract nouns as words, like collaboration. And so but that doesn't mean I don't like what happens. And I think it's really nice to humanise it. So, because if we're talking about collaboration, what we're talking about people working with other people, and the reason why that happens is because of relationships and trust and knowing each other. So, as an example, when Animal Justice Project did a banner drop on the front of DEFRA last year, I drove the Animal Rising activist to London, who then is working for Animal Justice to do that banner drop. And when Plant-Based Treaty was setting up, I worked with Anita and Nicola to sort of, advise. Not that I'm, anyone special, but they asked for help because they knew me, and we had a trusting relationship where we could do that work. And I think it's really important that we, let's get to that human level, because actually it's at that human level where collaboration works. So Animal Rising shares an office with Just Stop Oil. And the reason why we do is actually because it's really important if we're going to build an animal movement, and it can be incredibly strong and big and powerful, but we also need to collaborate with organisations outside of the animal ecology, such as in the climate space, political space, democracy space, if we're actually going to achieve our goals. So actually sharing an office with people and making lunch with them on a Wednesday and doing the washing up with them and sharing a toilet rota with them, that's collaboration as well, and I think that's really important. So Animal Rising, I think, has that built into its DNA. And some of the, and the flow, the dynamic flow of people between movements is actually really, really important. And the organisations, they're just names in the end. Like Animal Rising, they're just names. It's a bunch of people trying to do good things. And when we remember that, then the collaboration becomes actually really easy. And I think that's where we're at.
Thank you, Alex. So there's a really good range. I'm going to just point to group who were here yesterday, obviously Animal Aid. And what was interesting about Animal Aid, you mentioned, but it's one thing collaborating within, but then you reach out and collaborate outside of our circles. So they've collaborated with a firm called Accelerate to replace animal testing. And it's a vegan-run laboratory that's developing alternatives to animal testing. But then they've also gone and collaborated with Lush, which is obviously a business. Neither of these, Accelerate are vegan. Lush isn't a vegan organisation, but they are vegan-friendly, if you like. They're sort of allied to vegan. They're more than happy to front this, So they did a big campaign together. So there's an example too of groups working from, not just with like-minded people, but also reaching out just beyond the groups and into other groups. Claire, what's in the pipeline for Animal Justice Project next? What collaborations are in hand, and what exciting plans can you share with us to inspire that are not under wraps?
I was going to say there's probably not much that we can share that's. Obviously we've got sort of investigations. We tend to don't tend to collaborate with other groups when it comes to investigations, but we have started liaising with Viva, Animal Aids, and a couple of other organisations on tactics for investigations, which I think is actually super useful because we're all doing field work and we're all doing it in slightly different ways. So I think working together to sort of get some kind of streamlined process when it comes to processing the material, the footage and the stills, I think could be very useful. And also to make sure that that material stands up in court as well. So making sure that the SD cards are kept in a certain way and what have you. So we're collaborating a bit more on investigations. I think certainly Animal Rising, we're always keen to work with Animal Rising, and we are talking to a couple of members now about some projects. I think just attending the national demonstrations and just generally being open to collaborations with other organisations. One thing I will say is, obviously, we don't campaign for the Better Chicken Commitment. So Better Chicken Commitment is when welfare organisations lobby supermarkets to encourage them to give chickens, for example, a few centimetres of extra space. So, but rightly or wrongly, we probably wouldn't collaborate with an organisation campaigning for that and campaigning for free-range farming, because our job is to expose free-range farming. So I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know whether we would ever be able to collaborate on that, but they're pushing for free range and we're pushing against free range. So, yeah.
That's really interesting, Claire, because this has come up a couple of times, and I've said this too. VegFest, we're the same. We're an empty cages. We're a Tom Reagan firm. We want to see empty cages,
Exactly.
not bigger cages. And we know that over the last decade, there has been quite a standoff between animal rights and animal welfare. And part of our remit is to find ways to, disagree respectfully, and then find where we can collaborate.
Yeah.
And what I said in my talk at Brighton actually is that, I can't work with somebody who wants to campaign for bigger cages, but I know those groups have an interest in increasing plant-based options. They want to see system change. And so, I would feel as VegFest very comfortable about collaborating with the Bigger Cages campaign on plant-based treaty. That there's some shared values. So, okay, we don't agree on this. We don't have to agree, but we can be respectful. And then we can find ways of where we do have an agreement and then go for that. And that's the sort of halfway point that I think is emerging. It's a really good point.
It is. It's difficult. One organisation is, I don't want to name and shame, but one organisation which does amazing work is Animal Quality. But obviously Animal Quality does also promote the Better Chicken commitment. Open Cages, very much pro Better Chicken commitment. So it is a real difficult one because, I know Abby, we're friends, we help each other, the CEO of Animal Quality, but at the same time we don't always agree on everything, but I think that's okay. It is a particularly difficult one with the Better Chicken commitment because, we are exposing an industry that it's moving towards cage-free anyway. So my personal opinion is that it's a waste of time and resources to be lobbying supermarkets to go in a direction which they're going anyway, because consumers don't want chickens in cages. So, but anyway, that's going a bit off topic. So, yeah, it's an interesting one.
Claire, it's really on topic. And what I'd love to say is what's so refreshing to hear you say, and you're mentioning these people, you're friends with them, you work with them, you can politely disagree quite strongly, but you don't have to go after each other. You can just make your position clear and then look for where we can work. Yeah, so that's really important. Yeah. And I think that's my message to people who are perhaps stuck in this paradigm of us and them. Is let's find ways. Let's not just pretend that's not important, but let's find ways of.
Yeah, another quick example is Animal Aid. Again, I know Fiona very well. I've known Animal Aid for many, many years. And they've campaigned for CCTV in abattoirs. We have a campaign called Scammed, which is all about how CCTVs doesn't work. Now, the system is basically broken. So again, that's another direct contradiction. But it's interesting because maybe not everybody in Animal Aid or Animal Quality agrees with that campaign either. So it's personalities as well.
Yeah, so then it's really important, and Alex, you said, it's about, we're humans, we're friends, we've just got names. We can have these polite discussions, and part of this panel is about making it the default, especially for people coming into the movement, that it's okay to disagree. It's all right to have different positions, but we don't have to punish each other on that. We can find ways to still work together, and I think the climate crisis demands that. And Peter, from a position of the Plant-Based Treaty, one of the things I love about the Plant-Based Treaty was just celebrated his second birthday, by the way. So happy birthday, everybody, and well done, PBT team. You're phenomenal. You've really inspired us all, and particularly because you've given us this opportunity where all of us can support this. We all agree. And I think it's the first time I've seen everybody in the house agree on it. So Peter, tell us more.
Sharks, but I've only been involved since last summer, so I can't take the credit. But also, it's very interesting that I had a conversation with Michaela from Animal Rising last week, and what you're saying about respectfully disagreeing, Michaela said that possibly our approach with councils can be counterproductive, and so I'm really interested to talk to her. I called her here, but because that I don't really care which T-shirt I wear, particularly. I'm particularly my driving thing is environment, but I've been vegan since 2015, vegetarian since I was a kid, but. And animal rights, it absolutely drives me as well. But environment is, and it's beyond an emergency. My sister's probably going to go to prison for a second time because she's involved with Just Stop Oil, and I look at her and think I'm not doing enough. But you know, I've really do not care, as I say, which organisation I'm working with. If we're
just
doing,
remember, you can do more outside a prison cell than you can do from within.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, that's true. But what the action she's, you know, going to court for was the M25 one, which has had incredible reach. So I don't think it was a wasted action by any means. But I mean, I worry about her. You know, she's also my mother's carer. So I've given up my job so that I can go and, you know, be on standby. And so, you know, it has ramifications. You know, and that what you said about relationships, Alex. You know, my sister's need for like a community to support her campaigning. I'm seeing that, and you know, I have a tendency just to kind of wander in and go, "Hi, I'm here," you know, all that. But I really do want to make connections with other organisations. But the plant-based treaty, I think, if we, you know, what I'd say to other organisations about plant-based treaty is use us.
Yes.
You know, use
because
us.
it takes nothing away from other
it takes
campaigns,
nothing away from
it
you.
adds to the
If
story.
you look at the goals, you'd have to, you know, hate the world to you know, and yet you stop, and not one more acre of animal agriculture. All institutions should be making plant-based lifestyle accessible on the basis of food justice as much as anything else, and then restoration of land. Because we all know, I mean, the great thing about coming to these things is we are all talking on the same page, but we all know that like 25% of the land could feed. I think the economists say that the absolute darkest number is 20 billion humans, and we could feed that number on plant-based and still restore a sizable part of the land thing. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, but that is ammunition for, and you know. And
talking of which,
guys,
Justin, I understand. There's. I got to watch this in case I'm saying something. So I understand there's a bit of a move for COP28 coming from Viva. Is that right?
Yes, we're starting to reach out. It's only kind of just been like confirmed, but we're going to do a big kind of action over COP28 because we just think it's ridiculous that we're in a climate crisis, we're in an ecological crisis. Animal agriculture is responsible for 1/5 of all greenhouse gas emissions, and nowhere do they say in like our kind of net zero targets, our kind of, if you look at the national determined contributions to the Paris Agreement, only 2 countries out of the 193 signatories even include dietary change. They're not putting it on the agenda anywhere, and we just think it's ridiculous. So we are going to be doing a big collaborative action out in Parliament Square, other stuff around it, and we're going to be contacting people this week, so you're kind of very at the beginning of it all, to say that we think this is ridiculous, and we want to bring not just all the animal groups together, but we're also going to be reaching out to the environment sphere to be there, because how we're phrasing it is we're not saying you need to say go vegan on the commitment, because they're not going to even consider that. We're just saying you need to start talking about what we eat. We're thinking that's not too much to ask, and it's ridiculous that they're not doing it. So we're going to be reaching out to environment groups, animal groups, because like you say, we need to. It's brilliant being all together an animal, but actually we need to be in other spheres where we're going to be making that difference. And if we can have people who maybe are on the edge of going vegan, and then they interact with people such as us, and that helps them on the way, that's a positive thing in my mind. I was actually on a different panel yesterday at Forwards Festival, and it was all about talking about the ethics of consumption. And all the time we were talking about sustainable food, but nowhere did anyone say, except for myself, what about the animal? Like, it was all about, reduction. But I was like, but we also got to remember who we're eating. We've got to remember that billions of animals die each year, every year for our diet. So I think it's always important to kind of bring that element into the environment sphere as well. It's like, it's great that you're thinking of cutting down, but why aren't you cutting out and remembering that bring that animal aspect in as well? But we're not going to do that if we don't start bringing in those other groups to those conversations. So Viva really, you'll hear more about it the coming week, but we'll be reaching out to all groups such as you guys, and we'd love you to attend and with more details, and how what you could bring. You can see how we could all work together to make it a really big, a powerful event to say something to the government that we're not happy and we want them to do something.
Right, that's really exciting news. Really exciting news, Jasmine. Really happy to hear that. Yes, Peter, did you want to add in?
That blind spot it's maddening, but your adverts that you've just put out and things like that kind of, because I live in a community where, I don't know that many vegans, but it's easier to talk about than it was a few years ago, than 2-3 years ago. And that's thanks to the sort of stuff that you've done. That Flora advert they did a few months ago.
Oh, the molecular one with the blood.
No. The Muller one. That was. Yeah.
So we got the COP28 thing coming up. Is there anything else that you're?
So we're starting to. I can't say exactly yet, but last year we did kind of collaboration with a local Bristol restaurant, the Canteen.
Oh yeah.
I would really recommend anyone going to eat there. It's delicious.
Yeah,
their
I
food.
saw that. That's great.
But we did it to do a carbon on menu trials. So we worked with them, and we worked with My Emissions, who are a carbon calculating charity. Company, but they did do it for pro bono for us, which was very nice, to do a trial of carbon on menus, and basically the Canteen has now kept that on, and they will continue to be running it to get that conversation of, well, it was kind of in reaction to the calories on menus, no matter what your stance is, that be making mandatory by the government. We're like, well, why, if we're talking about our health, why aren't we including the importance of the planet health, which by extension is also our health and future? So we're now expanding our kind of restaurant work, because we're thinking of the different stakeholders that are crucial in kind of engaging the public and people, and the government, obviously, they're being very slow to do that engaging. We wrote a letter when we released our latest kind of planet guide to them, and they came back and said, oh, we can't tell people how to eat. And I was like, well, that's absolute rubbish. You've put the calories on menu. You've banned junk food adverts like past Watershed and all that stuff before Watershed. That is you telling people how to eat. You have started putting that control, but you're just not addressing it for the planet. So we're looking at the stakeholders, and you're doing amazing work with local councils, but restaurants have a really big power to play in talking about what they're eating, starting those conversations, seeing more vegan options. So we've got some really excited stuff happening this year, looking at restaurants, and we've got some people involved to try and really normalise veganism in the mainstream diet and lifestyle, and that it isn't this niche thing at the sides, and to get it more wider screen. So I can't say any more than that just yet, but next couple of months we'll be announcing some exciting
That's
collaborations.
really exciting. It's so exciting seeing so many fresh campaigns coming out, and an absolute honour to be on the sort of cutting edge of it. It's these things are just about to happen. It's we're watching this. It's I titled my talk actually at Brighton, it's called Unity in Motion, and the reason I mention motion is because it's actually happening in front of us. So, all you've got to do is pay attention and tune in, and it's already happening. And that's phenomenal. And I know, from 43 years' experience of this movement, it's never happened. So it's happening now, and that is really exciting. And Claire, you said this, didn't you? It's 10, 20 years ago, it just wasn't the done thing, was it?
Yeah,
No.
definitely. I can absolutely sense a change. And I have to say, I think Animal Rising has actually contributed a fair bit to this kind of collaboration.
Yes.
Actually, one thing I did want to say, since we're talking about campaigns, one thing we are going to be working on is getting the wildlife trusts to go vegan, which I think is really cool, because it is kind of similar to what these guys are doing. And actually, there is already one vegan cafe of the Wildlife Trust, which is, I think, in the Lake District. So that's pretty cool. And actually, we have taken inspiration from the university campaigns, from the councillor campaigns. So we're definitely getting a bit more lobby-y, if that's a word.
That's great news. And also, Jasmine, isn't it, Viva, you got involved with that big Extinction Rebellion solidarity thing too, didn't you? Very prominently so. I think, to give credit to Viva, I think you're the most prominent, and you were really pushing that one. And it's almost like, you were going in there, it's going, right, don't forget about the animals, while you're all talking away. It's like, yeah, keep the animals in the picture. And that was really inspirational.
Yeah, we thought it was so important to be there. I'm the environment campaigner at Viva, so I was like, we have to go. Juliet was really like, as soon as the email came through, she's like, Viva's got to be here. So yes, we joined in on the march. We had the banners and posters, and we're just like, we're going to bring a stool. We're going to bring a stool, and we had so many amazing conversations that day. And that's what I mean about being in those environment spheres. It's so important to talk about the animals and the planet. And it was a great day. And sometimes I feel like in kind of when you do a lot of actions, you can feel like when you see a lot of investigation footage and you hear about the planet, it can feel a bit kind of down. You're like, oh. Yeah. So just going to those events and talking to other people, even if they don't have the same opinions, but they're all kind of united under the same goal, and seeing so many people there, I felt was such an uplifting weekend for me, to be there and feel part of it. So I think they're so important, not just to get on the national scale and to raise awareness of the issues, but for the people within the movement to feel part of that kind of community and have something really positive.
Yeah, that's really important because it's such a struggle. And I don't mind saying that. Sometimes I just feel so alone, and I just find it excruciating pressure, and and then somebody gets in touch and it's like, oh, Tim, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, thank you. Yeah, we're not alone, So this is really, especially I think it's important to recognise there's a mental health issue, a despair, what we call climate despair. There's a burnout issue. And Alex, actually, that leads me on to you, because Animal Rising have, really pushed the boat out this year and really led the way, actually. I thought what you achieved at Aintree, two things. One, you had this really good collaboration. You had Animal Aid and Viva both rolling out the horse campaigns. You had Hunt Sabs, which isn't a vegan organisation, it's an animal protection organisation, coming in and getting involved. And then you had the Merseyside animal rights groups. You had a proper grassroots local group, all collaborating. But then what was even more impressive, and I have to hand this to the Animal Rising media team, having done a lot of media myself, it's a very tough call sometimes. And Animal Rising just swept the board. You just owned the British media, including all that right-wing media. You just owned it, and they didn't come close to you, time and again. That was really exciting. But I sense there's been a bit of a, Animal Rising maybe have hit a bit of a buffer recently. There's been a little bit of burnout and kind of, prisons, courts, police is heavy-handed. The right-wing media is pretty taxing. But there's also been some, unfortunately, and this is important to raise, there's also been some, as it were, attacks or whatever, from within the movement too. And I think that's probably the biggest cause of burnout. I mean, it's one thing taking on the police, taking on the courts, taking on the Aintree security, and taking on the British right-wing media, but then to be attacked from within, that's almost insufferable. But moving on from that, Alex, tell us on a positive note, what is next for Animal Rising? What are we going to see next? Bated breath.
It's been, you're right, there's been a recognition that, Aintree hit some sort of height, and that was difficult to replicate, and particularly difficult to replicate when the state repression and the threats to people's liberty and the police and the court cases are all piling up on people. Some people have got that 10, 11, 12 outstanding court, cases. We're going to, and I think there's 22 on at the moment. So we're just not 22 people, but 22 cases with multiple defendants. So we're going to see people go to jail. And so, in terms of the core team as well, that's been really depleted in both energy and capacity. So we're taking a step back. And part of that step back in terms of moving from Animal Rising 2.0 to Animal Rising 3.0 is to look at the bigger picture. You know, Animal Rebellion was founded in the strategic sense of leveraging the climate crisis as the quickest potential change for ending the animal exploitation. So placing animal agriculture at the centre of like environmental groups and environmental movements for Extinction Rebellion, etc. To say, you know, this is absolutely at the centre. So it's what Viva is going to be doing at COP28. It's what the Plant-Based Treaty is doing. So your Unity in Motion talk that was then replicated in the Forza Vegan magazine has 9 C's. And actually, but that big 10th C, or 10th or 11th C, is climate collapse. And so what we're actually looking at is what's going to do the paradigm shift into a kind of society that is dealing appropriately with all of the outcomes of climate collapse and all of the causes of it, with animal agriculture being one of the main causes. And actually, in the model that we're looking at for where we're going next, there will be less direct action because of the state repression, because of the shift towards fascism that happens in states under pressure. But that doesn't mean we'll still be doing pressure campaigns. But for actually the bigger picture is it's collaboration with those organisations working in democracy, working in politics, working in climate. And I think actually for the animal movement, it's really, really important. I mean, I said this in my talk earlier. There needs to be some sort of spiritual and personal transformation of the leaders in the movement to recognise that, particularly in the welfare organisations, like the welfare campaigns to put a better chicken, situation. Gee, there's going to be no food system in 10, 15 years unless we deal with like the end of modernity. So thank you for your work. You've done brilliant work in the last few decades moving things forward. But the state of the world we're in now needs to be looking at that bigger picture. And everything we do at the campaign level and an organisation level and movement ecology level has to be grounded in that reality of the slide into fascism, the collapse of our modern systems, political, social, economic, and food. And actually, I do think that can, with the right people doing the right works, is there an animal movement ecology climate alliance? Is there a praxis tank where we all come together and really go through these journeys to get to a point where we're recognising the significant central threat of the collapse that we're facing, to actually really accelerate and modernise and synthesise and simplify our campaigns as a movement ecology for animals. Because, I mean, the climate is devastating the world for animals, all the wildfires, think of all of the animals dying there, and with animal agriculture being the biggest cause of that problem. That vicious cycle is something that we should all be focusing on. So I think for Animal Rising, what we've got is actually a picture where we're going to try to do that work across the movement of building alliance, collaboration, and finding creative solutions to how we can, all of those who work for animals, move more effectively together towards that real picture that we're facing.
Fabulous, folks.
Sorry, it wasn't very optimistic, was it?
As I have by listening to that. It's really exciting stuff. So look, we haven't got too long. Part of this, I've heard this phrase used a couple of times. Is we're just opening up the conversation. Really, we're not looking to close it down or tell people what to do or we're looking to open this up and build on it. What I would say, I'm just going to point, I've so loved to hear, we had Nathan yesterday from Plant-Based Unis going, let's have a bit of love back in the movement, Let's show some love, And that's what we set VegFest up for, is to celebrate what we got, not to protest about what we haven't got. Let's come together and celebrate. And I love talking about self-transformation. And it points to the very famous philosopher Lao Tzu, who said, you want to transform the world, transform yourself. And that's at the heart of it. And that's why we have so many, about that in our movement, is to, enhance your own understanding of yourself is the best transformation we can make. So look, we're a bit short of time. We're coming up to the comedy session in about 14 minutes. So very briefly, I'm going to ask all of us to just touch on, perhaps in just a minute, point or two. Point two, what do you think is holding us back? And what can we do about it? So for example, Claire, you represent Animal Justice Project, which is, more recently formed than Animal Aid, Vegan Society, and Viva. And, so for you, this is really important that you have your own identity, you have your own donor base, you have your support base. Is that impact, do you think? I mean, how do you see do you see any problems with collaborating?
I hate being first in this line. My answers are always most boring. Any problems with collaborating? I mean, I think obviously, we need funds to survive. And I think obviously you need to be aware, obviously you are collaborating. I hate to say it, but I guess competition in some ways. I mean, Viva is, us and Viva, I mean, I worked for Viva for many years, so I know Viva very well, I know Juliette very well. But it's a bit like David and Goliath, but we work on, almost identical issues in some cases. So I don't know, I guess I think one of the negatives would be that you're starting to sort of sing from the same hymn sheet, whereas I think maybe a strength of Animal Justice Project is the way we differ. And I think that benefits us in terms of fundraising, in terms of supporters. I think they see us maybe in a different way to Viva, for example, even though we kind of work on similar campaigns. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think one of the negative things could be how it impacts your organisation in terms of support. And I think having that kind of unique selling point is a good thing as well. So I think it's striking the balance. Does that answer the question?
It's a really good.
These guys are going to have a better answer now.
No, thank you for your honest answer, because look, this is the issue. Is that we've got to survive, and we need to get on the same page, but not lose our identities. Part of what I would put forward as a solution for that is to recognise key campaign issues. And get behind the group that's organising it, so we can all have a turn, as it were, in leading this. So, Animal Rising leading at Aintree, maybe Viva leading at COP28. We could see Animal Justice Project maybe leading on another level. And so as it were, we all work together, but we recognise each other's differences. I think we value that, we honour that. And,
I think we all have strengths, and I think our investigation, our media work is phenomenal for the size that we are. There's probably 5 of us. I think I've got 7 staff. No one's full-time. And I think we cover so much ground for a small organisation. It's actually quite incredible.
You make a lot of noise for 7 people.
We make a lot of noise, and we get extensive media coverage, and we do constant back-to-back investigations. I would say probably more than any other organisation, actually. So I've blown my own trumpet enough. But I think having your unique selling point is also equally as important. And I think it's collaborating, just being strategic about it and collaborating, as you say, with other organisations which have other strengths. So a lot more money, or a lot more supporters, or a lot more knowledge. I think it's being clever in the ways you collaborate.
Particularly with undercover investigations, because of the dangers involved. So when people talk to each other about those, that's really safeguarding those activists and stuff. That's really important, and also making the most of it. Peter, quickly, if I can ask you to be fairly brief.
Quickly is my strength. What Alex was saying about the need to adapt to political repression, the increasing political repression, we are in a democratic crisis. I mean, global democratic crisis, but in the UK, we are in a democratic crisis, and I'm politically homeless for, a political party. But one of the things I value in Animal Rising, when I talked to some people at Olympia, was they're talking to dairy farmers about transitioning. Now that seems to me, I know a dairy farmer. I also know, when you mentioned the Wildlife Trust, they're really pushing regenerative farming, which is, I think there's a baby here, so I can't say what I think it is, but it it's rooted in good science, but it's basically being used as a way to justify, to make people, when they're eating their McDonald's burger, think that they're eating a free-range cow. And so I really want to watch out for the cozy farm pushback, and I think we could all work to just not be cruel to farmers. I mean, really engage with farmers, really communicate with farmers and treat them with respect, because they have had a hell of a shock. They've just, with the loss of the agricultural subsidies, they have just seen their position of privilege go dumb. And so, we really need to communicate them on a respectful level. But at the same time, we need to watch out for the pushback from the meat industry, which is trying to get itself together. Not very well, I think. Not very well, because I think that the plant-based, like the stuff Viva are doing, that advert you did, like, pulled pork, and then the guy, genius. I mean, seriously, my wife and I were dancing around the sitting room when it came on. We were watching some, Secret Shame on Channel 5, and it just made our evening. But, that's great. But also, we need to watch out for they'll try to do the same thing. But with that, we need to be together. And I really was pleased to hear that, you're thinking on that level, the political level of, the politics globally, but in this country is going on a very dark direction. Right.
So Jasmine, Viva had traditionally not collaborated that much last decade, and very much kept themselves and built a very strong base. It seems to me now you are so strong. Last couple of years, you've been able to really, really start working. I've seen a change there, a massively good change, I have to say. But you're on the inside there. Do you think there's some problems in collaborating? Do you think there's areas we need to address, or do you think we've got a green light here to really accelerate this?
So the idea of collaboration, I think, is great overall, and I think what I think is so great about like the animal movement is the fact that you've got many different voices and approaches, because if everyone had the same voice and approach, I don't think you'd reach as many people. But then I think there you do have some problems with collaboration. So, for instance, when I do a lot of outreach on the street, I always love to say to people who aren't vegan, but they maybe are worried about the planet or something, and I'm like, I see what I eat and my kind of way of life as my form of initial activism. I almost think that what you choose to eat, for some people, if they're not vegan, it can seem like a really big leap, and I'm like, well, that in myself is a form of climate activism, and it's great to do more for like the animals and climate on web, but I think just becoming vegan and making that switch is huge for some people. But I know there's other people in the movement who have different opinions and think that that's a starting base, you need to do more. So I think there can be issues of collaboration when you have ideological differences of opinions like that, but I don't think that's a stopping block. I think that's something you work together and you can collaborate on different things. We're all united for the same goal. But that's what I think so great about the animal movement is that we've got so many different approaches, because our approach might work for one person, which it wouldn't work for another. And then a more general barrier I think you've got for collaboration is just the fact I don't think I've ever met someone in an animal charity or an animal activist who isn't giving their all. So if you go and collaborate, it's a more effort that you have to put on top. So it's just, the collaboration is great, but you don't also want to burn out. I always think you have to do stuff that's not always about the animals, because otherwise you're not going to survive. You've got to give yourself that kind of Sunday evening where you're not thinking about it. You do other stuff that brings you joy. And I can see collaboration, brilliant, but it's also remembering to balance life outside of it. I think that's so important.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. That's such an important thing. And I think that's where we can really help each other, by supporting each other more. So Alex, quickly, what do you see? You've had quite a lot of experience of this. I mean, we could point to the Animal Rights March recently, for example, of where people haven't collaborated. They've done the opposite. They've punished and been punitive and excluded people and shown all the characteristics that we don't really want to see. But having said that, we then all came together and did it. So what do you think?
Well, I think, to answer your original question, what are the obstacles? I think the structures and the funding inertia around how organisations get their money is still a problem. To be honest, but I think the biggest issue is, the two big issues is we've lived for 200 years under a welfarist model. First piece of animal welfare protection legislation 200 years ago last year, and it's all been welfare and protection. And the majority of the money in this country still goes to sort of sanctuaries and welfare organisations. It doesn't come into transformative change. Yes. So that is a problem, and I think structurally, as a movement, we could deal with that. And on your point about burnout and people, and about sort of like the clashes. We've spoken about this. Ego is still a problem. Like, we live in an ego-structured world. We all have egos. We're all operating out of our egos and protections. Actually, one of the best things we can do is personal transformation. Be aware of how our egos are playing out in the movement. I think everyone should just go and take loads of magic mushrooms, to be honest. Dissolve your ego, come back, and then everything's going to be all right. In a country where it's legal, obviously. It's plant-based, it's plant medicine, isn't it? It's like, what could be better? But I think those three issues, the ego, the funding structures, and the ways in which we sort of seem to accept a welfarist model for our legal, policy, social world, they're the things that we need to challenge within that bigger picture.
Brilliant, folks. Okay, well, look, we're going to wrap up very soon, so I'm just going to end on this. First of all, I'm going to invite all of you back in November to London VegFest Olympia to continue these conversations. So it's about 2.5 months away. In that time, I'm putting forward, it's very important, if we're going to be critical or critique or discuss these things, to be solutions-based. The solutions don't always have to be the solutions, but we need to put solutions forward to discuss, and then maybe they bring out other solutions. So 2 solutions I'm putting forward. One is we're going to hope to create a bit of a website for activists to list campaigns, to put up petitions, to post up free for vegan events, demos, protests, anything that's going on. Anybody can go and post them up, and then we can all see what's going on maybe ahead. So if Plant-Based Treat are going to launch a petition in a month's time, they can put it up, and then Animal Rising can see it, everybody can see it, grassroots can see it, public can see it, and then we can act on it, and then we can do MailChimps to people every week or two. Here's a bunch of petitions to sign, here's some events coming up, here's some demos. So try and keep a nice free flow of all of this where you can just access that info. So that's what we're going to try and do. But the second thing I'm suggesting is that we pick 5 or 6 key moments in the calendar of what's going on, and then roll out a load of campaigns around that. So we had Aintree, the horses, but we could extend that to shooting, to fishing, to captive animals, to zoos, any animals used for entertainment. And all the groups that have already got all this stuff, we could roll all that out in March and April at the same time as we're really maybe focusing on Cheltenham and Aintree, and broaden that conversation about animals in entertainment. And then we could be picking World Day for Animals in Laboratories, 24th of April, I think it is, and really looking for a month, again, rolling out the campaigns we've already got, and the media attention on animals in laboratories. The National Animal Rights March gives us an opportunity to really look at rights. What do we mean by animal rights? Basic right for animals not to be commodified. And we could really have those conversations about the morals and the rights and those areas. And then we've got COP28, so that's already happening now, so that's great. I was going to suggest COP29, but Viva beaten you to it. So well done. And then we could really get behind we could have that whole ecological discussion then. Then we got December, we could be really, all of us, getting people to sign up for Veganuary and celebrating all our food. I mean, it's Christmas, and it's a great time to do it. That leaves animals being used for clothing and fashion. So we just got to find one time, I don't know if London Fashion Week comes up in September, is it, or something? And we could really have that conversation. So what I'm suggesting is kind of in place, and to coordinate it, all we have to do is really, perhaps 1 month on, 1 month off. So we're not at it all the time. It gives us time for our own campaigns, which is really important to keep our identities and our fan base, if you like, but then come together on 6 key issues and really get behind it. And we don't really have to do any more than just put forward what we've already got. It's already there. So that's my little route map for collaborating and then coordinating. I mentioned this yesterday. It got really well received. It's really easy. It don't really take much, but a bit of a loose agreement, and then get busy with it. So there you go. That's what I'm putting forward, that we maybe adapt and see if we can get a little bit more on the same page without losing our identities, and see if we can sing from one song page, or whatever the word is, and really make that impact. And we saw that with Animal Rising and the entertainment, so we really did have a big conversation about that. So there you go, folks. Thank you ever so much for listening. I think we're out of time now. We filmed most of it, but the battery ran out, so we were not going to see the last 15 minutes. I'm really sorry about that, but these things happen, but not to worry. We've got a councillors panel yesterday. We've got the activist panel yesterday of full effect, and then we've got 3/4 of today's panels. People, I'd like you to give a big round of applause for these people, and anybody, any of you who are out there, who are active, volunteering, give yourselves a round of applause too, because this is the future of our movement. We're going to become a mass movement, and that's just so exciting. For the animals. Thank you very much, folks.